Hello sewing friends. I am hoping that I can do a live tomorrow. We are doing a family event and I am not sure what time I'm going to be back, but as I said before, I was going to be sewing this again. So if you're connected with me on my personal page, I was making this for the Hubbins and it turned out great, and I am going to be doing it again. This time I'm being a little bit creative and I'm going to be using this brown. So this is jersey knit. Does it have a stretch? So on the back of your pattern there is this stretching. When you look at, here it goes. So when you have, this is called the pick a knit 2-inch rule. So you have to hold your fabric between here and here 4 inches, and it has to stretch out to here. So I'll go ahead and zoom in. So with my hands, I'm putting one thumb on the beginning of the bar and one thumb on the end, and then it has to stretch out, and it's stretching there, so this is a good fit. So now I want to show you a knit that might not meet the qualifications for this. So this is a knit fabric. So here is the grain. I'm going to put it on here. Let me get you over some so you can see. I feel like this is at an angle. Ooh. Okay. So let's go from here, see if we can get out 50% stretch. And no, see that? That's as far as I get. Let me do it again. Here, with it not stretched. So now I have to stretch it all the way to here. And I can't stretch it. So this would not be a good knit for this pattern. When it comes to this pattern, for my husband, it only takes 2 yards of fabric. So when you look at the back here, where's it at? Okay. So this is view B that I'm making for him. And so when you look at view B, the top, you for an extra large you need 1 3/4. So I would just go ahead and get the 2 yards just to be safe, because it's only another extra quarter. But if you don't want to spend, if you want to save your bucks, then don't do that. But I would just, it's easy for me to just go in and say, give me 2 yards of fabric. So B is the same fabric, but I wanted to do 2 sleeves. So I'm going to do the brown as this part here, and then I have this print which I want to do with the sleeves, and I guess the print will also be the neck too. So I want to use C for my fabric. So here's C. I can get it close. Okay, here's C. So for the front and back, 1 yard, so that's what I got. And then for the right sleeve and neckband, 1 yard, and the left sleeve, 1 yard. So if you were going to get 2 different prints for the sleeves, you would have to get 1 yard, because you can't get anything smaller than that. But if you're going to use the same print for both sleeves, then you still only need to get 1 yard, because you're going to fold this in half and use it. You're going to use it. So here's what I mean. So here's the print fabric. And so this right here is 1 yard. So it's one, oh, let me back up some. Okay. Are we good? Are we good? Are we good? Okay, so this is 1 yard of fabric. So if you were going to cut 2 different sleeves, I'm just going to quickly lay this out. So for the sleeve, you would only be able, you would cut one out. So you would have to have 1 yard of this fabric and then 1 yard of another fabric. But because I'm going to make both sleeves out of this fabric, I still only need 1 yard because now I'm cutting out 2 because the fabric is folded. And then for the neckband, I am going to make this neckband 2 inches longer because I need that extra at the bottom, because on the pattern here they have this where you sew this X on the placket, and I don't like doing that. And so what I like to do, I'm just going to make it 2 inches longer so that I can sew it on the inside, and then I'm going to hand stitch it around on to keep this closed. And I'll go over that once I do the pattern. But if you want to follow me and avoid doing this square and cross X at the bottom of the placket, cut this like 2 inches longer. And so for the sleeve, I'll be able to get 2 out of here. So now I'm looking at this fabric, and I'm seeing there's this, I'm just now seeing this, that there's a design where it looks like there is a pattern here, and this is, I see a one-way thing going on here, because you see there's these little, looks like little, I'll just say little eyes for the sake of not knowing what it is. And it almost looks like those are like 2 eyes and like a mouth. And so I'm looking at it, so which way would I want this to go on his arm? Let me look at it the other way. I think I'm going to make it look like, I think I'm going to do that, make it look like the mouth. So that, I'm going to be very careful. So that is called directional print. So I'm not cutting this out now, but I'm just preparing. So I would fold this in half, get out this nice and straight, and then lay this out using your grain line against the fold of the pattern here. Let me get my ruler. Okay. So say this was all ready to go. I would take a marking. So I got 20, I'm putting the 20-inch mark on the edge of the fabric, and I'm going to get this. So before I cut this out, so I would not fold this in half. I would not fold, if you get a yard, I would not fold this in half because you're going to do a lot of waste. So I would prefer to save a bunch on the end. So I would fold this up. So I would need, let's see, we're going to say from tip to tip, we're going to say 22 inches. So on my fabric, from the edge here down, I'm going to mark 22 inches, which would be right here. So as I look at this, I see that there is this consistent line right here. Here's an opening, and so I'm going to put a pin along this opening in the print. If you don't have print, you would have to use this and measure down 22, whatever those inches are that you want to use. But I would do 22 inches. So that's going to be my 22-inch mark along here. So what I'm going to do is make sure that I did not grab, see, I grabbed the bottom. I don't want to grab both pieces. 22 inches right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this out where my 22-inch mark is the edge. It'll take some work. I'm not going to cut this out. I'm going to do this. I'm going to cut it out later because I might not go live tomorrow. So this is for the early treat. Okay. So now at the end over here, I have a lot. I have something extra. I have extra, so I can do something else with this bigger piece rather than having a whole bunch of smaller scraps. I have now saved a significant piece over here that I can use for another project. So then I would take my sleeve, lay it on there, and if you have print on here that's really trustworthy, you can actually take your grain line and just lie it in an area that's consistent all the way up and down. I'm going to move this over, but since I don't have that kind of room, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ruler. I got the 16th inch mark on the edge of my fabric, and I'm going to line up my grain line somewhere where I can remember it. So I'm going to put it on the this is the 7.5 mark, so 7.5 mark and then 16. So I'm going to go ahead and put that there. Now I'm going to take and put 16 on the end here, and then I'm looking at 7.5. So I'm going to scoot this over just a bit. So now my pattern is in a good position. So I would go ahead and pin this down or put some weights on it. After you cut it out, you want to make sure that you mark your notch, your single notch here, single notch here, single notch here for the front of the sleeve, and a double notch here in the back of the sleeve. You don't really need to mark these dot these circles here, because all that is doing is telling you to sew up till that line, which is 5/8. It's 5/8 of an inch. So you just, if you just remember, you're not, whenever you put your sleeve together, you're not going to here. So when you put your, oh, look how dry my hands are. When you put your sleeve together, you're going to match up those circles. So I'm trying to get it here. It's slippery. Okay, there it goes. So whenever you sew your sleeve, when you sew, well, it's not for the, this is going to be when you attach it to the, I'm sorry, when you attach this to the actual shirt, you're going to stop stitching right here. So you're not going to attach this to the front. So here's your front. Where's the front? Where's the front? It's for the front and the back. So here's also the front, and it has a dot here as well. So when you sew these together, you're going to sew from the very edge. You're going to sew all the way down. Oh, that's the wrong end. You're going to put these together. You're going to sew from the very edge, back stitch, sew all the way down. You're going to match your notch, and you're going to sew, and you're going to stop at that circle, which is 5/8 of an inch. So you don't want to sew all the way down. So this dot is here to tell you that's where you need to stop, because once you get your sleeve on, then this has to all close up. Okay, so you don't really need to, for your sleeve, you don't really need to mark your dots on the side, but do mark the one at the top, because this is the point that is going to match on our bodice. So you want to make sure that you put this marking in, and then remember that all of this, that this up here is a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I think even I did a 3/8 of an inch all the way around. So that's all that is done. That's all that needs to be done with the sleeve. And we're going to go ahead. So then I would take this off, and then I would have my my front and back, which would be this brown, and I would lay this out. And this here, I would lay out, because you have a yard, I would do half and half. So what I call a half and half is whenever I take my fabric and I fold this part half to the middle, somewhere near the middle. And because I don't have any pattern in here, I am going to make sure that this piece is the same length, because both of these pieces have to be cut on the fold. And if you fold this in half, let me show you. If you fold this in half, you only have one fold. You only have one fold, and you need two folds because both the front and back have to be cut on the fold. So what I call half and half. So you're looking at your fabric. If you want to know what's the right, it looks the same on both sides. But if you want to know what's the right side, you can. If you look at the selvage, the fabric curls to the wrong side, and you can see the pricks coming up. So that's what I call the right side. So half and half is where you lay out your fabric table. And I'm going to figure out, just lost my sleeve, how much I need for this end. So from the center out to the point is 13 inches. So I want a fold that's going to be 13 inches wide. So is this, then I'll say, is this 13 inches? Nope, it's 12 inches. So I have to go a little bit further. Okay, I'm at 16 inches. So I'm going to leave it like that. But when I do this for real, I'm going to go to 13 inches. So this is half and half. So this piece would lay on the fold here. Then you would pin that down. And then you would take the other piece and you would fold it in this way. I would get on the other side of my table and fold that towards the inside. And then the other piece would be on the fold on that end. Okay. So that is what I call half and half. I don't know what other people call it, but I call it folding my fabric half and half. And on here, this is the front. For the front, again, you don't have to do those dots that are at the underarm. That's just where you stop sewing. But you want to mark your side notch, your single notch on the side, the single notch on the sleeve. And you also want to have some carbon paper and a tracing wheel. And there is a stitching line right here. And then here are the markings for the different sizes: extra small, small, medium, large, and extra large. So the bigger the pattern is, the higher this is. That's because if you were using the extra small, which is all the way down here, is because the extra small is lower than the extra large. So you want to put that stitching line on your fabric, and that's going to go on the fold. And you want to make sure that that stitching line is on the front and on the back. And how I would do that, say that I had if this was carbon paper, I would put the carbon paper on this side, and then I would have another piece of carbon paper on the front, I would line this up, and then I would use a tracing wheel and trace that. And here's a tracing. Oh, my tracing wheel is way over there. So those are the markings that you would need to cut out for this. And then for the back, you need the single notch on the side, the double notch on the back of the arm, and then you would want the single notch up in the neck area. So put those aside. Also in the fabric, this fabric here, I am going, so this right here, I am going to, oh, if I wanted to be spiffy, I could like make the placket out of this, but I'm not. I'm just going to keep it brown. Again, I'm going to make this 2 inches longer. I'm going to ignore this square and X, and then I just need to make sure that whenever I sew this, so you're just going to, what this is going to do, you're just going to fold it. So I'll cover that in the actual construction, but you want to cut 2 of these out in fabric and 2 in interfacing. So you need 2 plackets. So 2 in fabric and 2 in interfacing. And then for the collar, you only need 1 in fabric. And you do want to make sure you want to put some seam interfacing here at the corner. I mean, not the corner. Interfacing at the edge here where this line, interface this area when you cut it out, and then interface the other side. And then you definitely want to make sure that you mark these dots. So you have 2 here, 2 here, 2 here, and then 2 at the end. Then you want to make sure you mark you cut in your single notches. This piece is going to be folded in half. And well, first sewn together and then folded in half. This piece does not get interfaced. And then make sure that you have all your buttons, and that is going to be it. And have your thread, and the next video is going to be my fabric is going to be cut out. I'm going to have my interfacing cut out, my interfacing onto my 2 plackets, and all my markings done. Okay, I think that is it. What else? Was there anything else to prepare for this project? I am thinking 2 of those. Everything is 3/8 of an inch, 3/8 of a seam allowance. Oh, there was something I wanted to cover. Okay. If you haven't cut your pattern out and you're not sure which size you want to cut out, here's my pencil. I'll go ahead and use this. So up here we have the body measurements. Let me see if I can zoom in some. So we have the body measurements, and so for this I would go by the chest. Measure the chest, and whatever the chest is, that's the one that you want to cut out. Now if your man's chest is in an extra large, unless he has a tiny waist because he's a bodybuilder, if he doesn't have a bodybuilder, just cut all of this out. Otherwise, if this is something I would make for my son, I would measure his chest, and then I would measure his waist, and I would actually grade between, say he was a large chest and a small waist, I would grade between the large and the small. So up here in the chest area, this is the chest area, so it would be a large, but here's the waist right here. So right along here is the waist. What I would do is I would get my other ruler. I don't know where my ruler is. And he would be a small. I would just take it and just draw a line until this large cuts down to a small. Probably something, there's a curve here, so I want to make sure that I keep that curve. So if you have a curved ruler, go ahead and, you know what, I'll show you No, okay. I'm not going to get the curved ruler. But that's how you would, you would just take this and you would just kind of like grade it just until you get right here. This is where you want to be. So just draw a line down and then make sure it's nice and smooth. And that's how you would grade between the sizes. But if he's an extra large and they got a belly, you want to keep it at this line. Now, say you're the guy that you are sewing for, say that the large is good for him, but then he has a pot belly and you don't want the front of the shirt to rise up in the front and show his gut. So what you can do is you can determine how much room. So this is going to be the front. This doubled is the front from side seam to side seam to side seam. And what you can do is you can say, okay, you know what? I'm going to add 4 inches. I need 4 more inches of fabric to make sure that it goes over his belly. So you want to make sure that you change the way this is lined up. You put this on the edge right here. And I would recommend tracing this out on another piece of paper and making the changes. But if you didn't want to and you just wanted to pivot on the fabric, you can draw in the neck and the underarm here, and then you want to kind of like put it where where that dot is. You want to hold that, and then you want to measure out 2 inches, because 2 inches to this piece adds 4 inches to both sides. So you're going to say, okay, 2 inches out is going to be right here. So you're going to pivot out like that, and you're going to draw that side seam in, and you're going to draw this bottom piece in, because you want to make sure that you add some to the bottom too. And then you bring it back, and then you will see that you have a line here and then here, if you can see. So the right out here. So you would draw your chalk line here, draw your chalk line here, bring it back to the center, maybe add an inch here, but you want to make sure that you get a nice straight line from the new edge that's 2 inches out all the way back to the center. So that's how you can make this pattern bigger if you don't have enough here at the waistline. So you need to go bigger. Another thing, I want to get to the sleeve. So I am now back with the sleeve. Say that you measure, so you measure this from seam allowance to seam allowance, and say you just know it's going to be tight. So the sleeve is going to look like this. So if you can see that with the pattern, the sleeve goes up to the neck, comes down under the arm. So here's the neck, here's the underarm. So say this is not going to be enough room. You need more. Down here you'll be fine, but if he's muscular or he just has thick arms, you're going to need some more fabric up here in the top part. So what I would do, and I'm not going to do it to my pattern, but this is what you can do. You just need some more room in here. You can, oh, I wish, how can I show you this without messing with my pattern? Let me get a piece of paper. So we're looking at this piece here, and I'm going to try to draw it. So here it's folded in half. So I have this up here, and this is going here, here, and it comes down like that. So to get more room in here, so we have our, this is going to be our seam allowance. And we have a 1.5 inch hem allowance, so the seam stitching line up here, well, not a stitching line, this is going to be the fold line. So this is what we're working with, and we need to add an inch. Say we're going to add 1.5 inches. We want to add 1.5 inches. to, so that it's not super tight up here. This is the shoulder right here. So we need it right around this area right here. This is because this is that upper arm. We want to get a 1/2 inch there. So one thing that you can do is that you can, I'm going to put across in here. Yeah, I don't want to go through the seam allowance, but then I need to cut outside of this too. I'm going to create these pivot marks. So up to the seam allowance here. Where's my scissors? Oh, I don't want to use either my fabric scissors or my paper scissors. I don't see them. I don't want to go through this line. Okay, so we're going to add 1.5 inches. So you're going to have to put a piece of paper on the bottom. So 1.5 inches. Let's mark 1.5 inches. 1.5 inches. Okay. So you probably can't see through my, oh, let me go the other way. Okay. Oh, so this is 1.5 inches, so I'm going to put my opening in the middle, right here. Wait for my camera to stop shaking. And then I'm gonna tape this down, but I'm low on the tape, so I'm just gonna pin this here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up. So see how this is buckling, because I need to have, this needs to be cut all the way up to the seam line. I need a pivot. I need a little hinge. Cut all the way up to the stitching line. And then you would open this up like that. Open it. So now I'm going to pin this over here. I'm going to pin this over here. This is going to cross. Okay. So I want 1.5 inches here. I don't want these lines to change. So in moving this open, let me back up some. Okay. In opening this, it's shortened here. I need to put a pivot right here. In opening this, it's made this shorter. So you would go ahead and tape this up. But then what I would do to get this, the length, so measure, where's my sleeve? Measure how long this is. And I don't have my tape measure. So based on here, this is, I'm using my cutting board. This is 27 inches. So once I have this spread out, I would then have this tape. I would then kind of cut this across and then drop it down to get to 27 inches to get back to this length. So after this is taped up, this was like impromptu, so I don't have my tape out. But once I have this taped out so that I have this extra room, I don't need it up here and I don't need that room down here. I need it right here around that bicep right here. I add it there, so then I will cut this and drop it down. Well, just like cut that. This would be all taped. This would be all taped and not moving. So we're going to pretend like this is all taped, and say I needed to add 3 inches, or to say like 1.5 inches. There's 1 inch. Here's 1/2. I would tape that down and then redraw my lines. Let me get another piece of paper. tape that, redraw my lines. And then that's how you can get more room if there's some biceps in there. You just needed that, you just want that space right there in that bicep area, right here. That's all we wanted. Okay, I hope that makes sense. If there's any other alterations or any other adjustments that you foresee, let me know, and I will definitely do my best to help you out. Okay, sewing friends, now we're going to go ahead. We got the fabric cut out. Now we're going to prepare it. We need to put some stuff on it. So now I'm taking the wrong side of my neckband, and I have some interfacing, and I'm putting the interfacing on the tip of my neckband. I already have my notches, so there's 2 single notches on this side, 2 single notches on the other side. This is the center. I'm not marking the center because I have notches, but I want to get everything where it needs to be. So there are 2 circles over here. So I am going to lift them up, and I'm going to mark my circles. Now after you mark these, if you're using a Frixion pen, you do not want to iron them because they will disappear. And then on this end, the very end, I am going to mark the buttonhole. I didn't do a buttonhole on the last shirt. Don't tell nobody. Now I'm going to my placket. Lord knows why I cut out 4. I have no idea. Both sides curl to the, this fabric, I think it's curls to the wrong side. Taking my interfacing, glue side, which is the bumpy side, faces down. And again, I made my plackets 2 inches longer. Gonna let those cool. So let me turn it. The sleeve is going to be upside down for you and me, so I can see where the fold line is. So I'm going to fold this up. And here's a little fun fact for you. So when we're looking at the sleeve, when we cut it out, the sleeve goes down and then it pivots out. The reason for that pivoting right there is because there's a bias right here. Then we bias out so that when we flip this over at that appropriate mark, the bias cut, that little slant, is now in line with the actual sleeve. This is the same thing that happens for pants cuffs. I'm gonna put some pins in it. Maybe that'll help the fold stay in there. We'll see. I am now pressing the cuff of the other sleeve, giving it lots of steam. Then, ooh, don't move. I use my hand for what the wood can't cover. Just waiting for it to cool off a little bit. So that the crease is formed and stays, hopefully with knit. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and pin. I'm going to take the fabric. I'm just going to confirm that I have notches in all of my pieces, and I don't, so I'm going to go ahead and get my snips. I'm going to go ahead and make sure. Okay, I am in view. Oh, awesome. So on this piece, this is where we have to trace in the stitching lines for the actual placket. So I have orange tracing paper. Let me make sure. See, so I can't use it. I have to use it long ways. Okay, so I'll do it twice. I'm going to lay out my piece. So I am working on the outside of the fabric. I'll lay my piece down here. And I'm going to trace. I have the camera in my way. So let me try to get under here. So I'm just, hopefully it's going to look like some dotted lines. Okay. Yep. And I have some dotted lines there. I don't think the camera will pick it up. So now I'm going to lay this on top. Now the hard part is that you have to make sure that everything is flush and properly aligned. So just to be safe, I'm just going to do this in pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the bottom of the, not cut, but trace the bottom of the placket. I'm going to just move up, keeping this in line. So now we are ready to start some sewing. So I have my front piece here that has the dotted lines for the placket. I'm going to take that as well as the placket. Here's the placket. My needle and thread I'm going to set aside. I'm going to take the plackets, I'm going to fold them in half and give them a good press. That's the other end. So here are the two plackets. I'm going to baste 1/4 of an inch on the raw edge. Then I'm going to open my front and I'm going to stitch inside that line. I know the instructions say to stitch on that line, but I've done this on the last one. There was some stitches showing, and so I'm actually going to, yes, I'm going to stitch on the inside of this line. I'm putting this on the longest stitch that I have, and I'm going to sew very, very close to that edge, making sure strings thread is always to the back. I'm stitching inside that line. I'm going to reduce my stitching length. I want a shorter stitching length. Turning. And turning to sew back up to the top. So I've given everything a nice press, and now I want to, first I'm going to trim up my plackets just to make sure that the tops are even and that they're both the appropriate length. To the other end, nice and straight. So I was going to use my basting thread, but since I have a Frixion pen that does show up on here and I'm already done pressing it, I'm just going to go ahead and mark my buttonholes. I'm marking the top and the bottom of them. Take the front, and this is something that I did not do last time. I just cut a line, and you really do want this to be even. Got the center. Now I'm going to take my rotary cutter and I'm going to slide it up. Making sure everything is, oh, look at me. There we go. Now I'm going to turn the shirt upside down so I can see the placket at the top. And with my scissors, I'm cutting it all the way to the corner but not going through. On one side, and then all the way into that corner on the other side. Turning my shirt back to the right side, taking my 2 placket pieces, and I'm going to take one and lay it on the front here and pin it in place. I'm going to check, make sure I'm catching that stitch on the shirt. Making sure everything is flat. Don't sew over the pins. So I'm going to get this to its side. Go down. Look under here, see how far I'm going, making sure I'm down to that stitch and I'm not under here. Lift that up a little bit so I can see under there. I should have marked under there for how far to go down, but I think we're good. So now I'm going to back stitch down. So I'm going to go forward, go backwards, and then forwards again. Check under there, make sure it's flat. Yep. Push this away and take a look to see how we did, or how I did. Need to redo that one, and this side looks a-okay. Let me see if I fold it in. It looks good. Now this side, we gotta do some more work. Why? Because see right here, it's shifted. So if I look in here, yep, so I can see right here, right along this curve, this area right here, my fabric shifted. So I'm going to unpick this from here to here, because this is where it shifted, and then restitch that area, and this one goes behind it. So the one on my left goes on top. I want to make sure that my fronts are even at the top. I'm going to do the nice little overlap. I'm going to pin my way down, because I have the extra at the bottom. I put that 2 inches at the bottom to kind of help me, give me enough room to get around the stitching. So I'm going to open it up. So I'm just going to make sure everything is lying flat. I'll get down here to the bottom. Make sure that stitching line is tucked inside. I don't know if we're on camera. I can't tell. And now I'm going to lift this up. And under here, I have the overlap, and I have this little triangle. So I'm going to pin that right above the stitching line. I'm going to fold it back down and take a look. So what I don't want is this I don't want no puckering right here. You don't want that. So I got to make sure that I am at a good spot. And lower that down some. And pin that. I'm going to look on the outside. So I got the left side good. At this right side, I still have some puckering in there, but I think I can work with that and get that out of there. So here's the back side. So it'll be like that on the back. And I'm going to serge around here and up. So that's why I put the 2 inches on here, because I really want to get a nice serge across there. And when I did the last shirt, I was able to serge the bottom, but it didn't look neat like the way I wanted it to. So here's the inside. Let's flip it out to the outside. I will take the pins out now. And here we have our front. So I need to go press this, get all this area nice and flat, and get this area flat, and then we'll be putting the buttonholes in this front. Lord have mercy. All right. So let's put them up here. How's that looking versus these darker ones here? I'm thinking I'm gonna get him to choose. We have the chosen button. He said those were talking to him. So those are the ones that we're going to add. So now we're going to set our buttons aside because I only need one. And we're going to go do our buttonholes. All right, I have my machine set up for, well, I'm getting the machine set up for the button. So if you have one of these, this is an automatic buttonhole maker. So you're going to take your button, put it in this nice little seat in the back. Oh goodness. Get it nice and snug. Lift it up and attach it. There should be a knob in the back of your machine where you drop down to engage the buttonhole maker. Mine is in the back here. So one thing that I do, and I strongly recommend, is to create the same piece of fabric that you want to add a buttonhole and do some testing. And so my placket is folded with some interfacing. So I'm going to go ahead and see how this buttonhole works. Not works, but how it's going to perform. So I need to put my buttonhole stitch on. So now I'm going to drop my needle and we'll see what happens. Wrong pedal. Here we go. All right, let's take a look at this buttonhole. All right. I think it's okay. I'm wondering if I wanted to have a little dense, a little more dense with the zigzag stitch, but I think this is okay. So I just need to make sure, see this right here, this little snafu right here, that is, let me bring it in closer. All right, where's it at? Here it goes. So this little snafu right here, that is because the thread was not pulled outside of the stitch. So the thread was on top of the fabric and it got stitched in that way. So to avoid that, you want to make sure that your thread is underneath your presser foot and to the back. So now we're going to go ahead, I'm going to make some buttons. So I'm going to start with button number 1. I'm going to center the red markings over that notch. And I know I may be a little close to the microphone on my phone. Drop it. Making sure that there's nothing hanging to prevent my fabric from going under. And I'm going to start. One buttonhole down. I cut my thread. Keep all thread to the back of the machine so it doesn't get in the way of the next button. Next buttonhole is right here. I'll put a pin in it just so I can see it better. There. Drop my needle, take my pin out, hold my fabric nice and loose. Now I'm going to make a note on my pattern that the buttonholes should be made before closing up, even before putting the box in the X here. Before closing this up, make sure that the buttonholes are already done. So here's the buttonholes with all the thread tails, and I don't cut them because I want to pull them all to the back. I don't want there to be loose thread in the front here. So what I do is I'm going to the back and I'm going to pull. If I can't figure out which one is my last thread, to pull the thread from the front to the back, no, I can't tell sometimes, then it is time for me to get, and this is tedious, but on the front end I take the thread, and I use the needle, and then in that corner where the thread is coming out, I pull it through to the back. So now it's nice and clean on the front, and then the back, I'm going to take these and tie them. And I'll show you one more time. I'm going to tie once. I'm going to tie twice. Now some people actually will take the needle and take the thread and thread it through the buttonhole opening. I don't do that. So I'm just going to cut it close as I can in there. So again, take the 2 pieces of thread, cut them close to each other, put them through the eye of the needle, slide them through that corner, separate the ones you want. Here we go. I try to get two strands in one hand and 2 strands in the other, and to tie 2 knots. One, that was a weird knot. So now I'm 3 in 1. That's okay. No, that wasn't even all of them. So I'm going to just knot it one more time. Nice and tight. And then I'm going to clip close to, okay. And then you go down and do all the buttonholes, and then we're going to come back and open up the buttonholes. So the next part of doing the buttonholes is to open them up once they are all in alignment. Well, not in alignment, just added, because if you don't have your buttons on, you know, you got the fabric cut out, but you probably, if you mess this up really bad, you could undo it, take the placket, detach the placket, and start over again. So I've pinned my placket closed, kind of how I want it to close whenever it's on. I have some gaping right here, but I will fix that. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take needle and thread, and I'm going to run it through each of the holes just to show where the button should go on the other placket, and then we're going to I'll open this up. Okay. So I have the thread, and so you can use your pattern if you want to get this set, but I like to use this method. So I'll pull that over some, and then I'm going to say I pull it over just a little bit more because I don't know how can I put this in words. I want to pull the placket over just so it's covering it, because I don't want the button to be centered on the other placket. I want it to be skewed a little bit, so that as the shirt pulls open, the button is in the right space to keep this from opening up. I hope that makes sense. So starting at the top, I'm going to go right here, and I'm going to go, here's the buttonhole. I'm going to go to the left of the buttonhole, and I'm going to pull my thread through. Once it gets to where I have a little bit hanging out, I'm going to go to the back end, and where's my scissors? Okay, and then cut that off. There's my thread. Should have used white thread, So here I am. Here's the buttonhole. I'm going to go on the left side of it, pull the thread through, and cut on the back end. The next button, go in on the left side, and trim. So I will do that for the next two buttons and I'll be back. Okay, so the thread is now through all the holes. So now I'm going to unpin the plackets, and then I'm going to hold the thread for the buttonhole and pull the first placket off. So unpin them, open it up, hold the thread onto the back placket and pull the front placket off. Pull the placket off. Hold the placket, pull it off. And then the last one, pull it off. So that is where I want to put the holes, and they are pretty much in alignment. So now I'm just going to go ahead and draw using my Frixion pen, the pink one. I'm just putting pink ink where every piece of thread is, just in case the thread comes out. I have an indication of where it's supposed to be. So this one right here is over, but I know that I want it to be, this is centered. I know I don't want that there, so I'm going to push that over to the side. So I'm going to ignore where that thread is because that was just my pinning. There we go. So now I'm going to sew my buttons on. Let's get a button. So I made this decision to sew my buttons on by hand, and I decided that I should probably record that in case you would want to sew yours by hand as well. So I'm down to the last button. I know, sorry. But I'm probably going to take the ones that I did by machine off. I'm going to take them off because I like the way the hand sewn buttons look. So I'm taking my button and I'm putting it right on that area that I want it. I'm not going to be worried about the direction of the buttons because they are probably going to move as it's being worn. So not yet. So from the right side of the fabric, I'm going to take my needle in to where that dot is, and I'm going to make a stitch. So I'm going to take my scissors, and any the ends that are sticking up, I want to cut it off, but I don't want to cut that knot. I just want to secure. I'm securing the stitch underneath the button. There. And so from the back side, you won't be able to see all that mess as you do up here when you do a machine stitched button. So now, I lost my button. So now that I have that stitch there, I'm going to drop my button on there, and I'm going to go into the other side, and I'm going to go through the top, through the fabric. I'm going to pull gently, but then put my finger underneath there because I want there to be some space underneath there for the shank. So now I'm coming back up through the same area, and I'm going to pull it through another hole, and I'm going to go down through the bottom. So each two there are, so now, okay, that's one stitch in that hole. Here's the second stitch. I'm going to do the other hole, second stitch. Now I'm coming up from the bottom, but I'm not going through any holes. Coming up from the side, I'm going to wrap this around there. This is creating the shank. Around again. I got a little loop up here. Oh, and there. Oh, I didn't do it. So let's try that again. I'm going to take the stitch around into the hole and lock it. So then I'm taking the needle through the actual shank. So there's thread down here. I'm taking the needle through there, pulling it up through, and then taking it through the hole once and pulling it. And taking the thread through the back. Look, I got a loop underneath there. Cut it. That's what I didn't want. This is what I didn't want to happen. So I'm going to snip those off and pull my button and see if anything comes off. All right, so now let me go back up and redo this one here. And this time I'm going to be sure to look underneath my fabric to see if there's any hank stuff that's going to mess me up, make my life a little complicated with the buttons. Okay. I'm going to get the thread. I'm going to knot it on the end. I'm using a double thread because my thread this is not buttonhole thread. Okay. Up through the dots. No, I'm sorry. Okay. Here's the dot. I'm going to go across, pull that up. Let me cut this tail off. And I'm going to go through that area again. Okay. Now I'm going down into the fabric. And I'm coming up through the fabric. Now I'm putting on my buttonhole. Going to the cross. Alright. Not pulling it tight. That's one stitch. That's 2 stitches. Up from the bottom. Where am I at? Here I am. And that's 1 stitch there. Look at that, see? That's how you get those holes there. Make sure I look back there. If I can remember where I was at. Going up. Pulling it through making sure I pull the thread all the way through and all the way back. Now I'm going up and under the button. Oh. Going to wrap it around 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to go around the button. Hold on. Now I'm going to go around the button, keeping a loop, tying a knot. I'm going to tie another knot, going around the button, going through the loop, tying a knot. Now I'm going to go through the shank, and then back through the fabric. And here's where I will cut it off nice and close. So that now when you look at the back, here's my hand. Let me get that. There's a stitch here. There it goes. Hand stitch button. machine stitched button, machine stitched button. Over here, hand stitched button. So you be the judge to determine which one you want to do. Okay? Let's move on. Now it's time to open up the buttonhole, and I plead with you, please use pins. So I'm going to take this pin, and right before this zigzag stitch that's right here, I'm going to put this pin across. And I'm going to put another pin across the bottom. And then what I like to do is I like to start at the end. So let me explain to you why I put these pins in and why I'm not going to use them. So you put the pin in because if you're going to start at one end and you're going to cut all the way down, that this is going to stop you. But if you don't want to do that, what you can do is you put your seam ripper at the bottom, and then you cut to the middle. And then what I do is I turn it over and I put the seam ripper at the bottom, at the end of the hole, all the way through. And then I carefully rip to the middle. And then when I get to the middle, I have a buttonhole. And then I can go ahead and clean this up. This is not mandatory. All this stuff will come out in a wash. Get it? Come out in a wash. Okay, let me clean that up. So here's the next one. This one, here's the next one. Going in at the end and carefully ripping to the center. Turn it around at the end. Carefully rip to the center. Look, I'm pulling up my knife and boop, popped open. Start at the end. Cut towards the center. Start at the end. Cut toward, pull my knife up right here, my blade, cut through. 1, 2, we got 2 more. Go in the bottom, cut to the center, turn it around, go to the bottom, cut to the center. Last one. And if you can't tell, I'm actually pulling the fabric and not my knife. I'm pulling the fabric down and not moving the knife. There. And then if you want to, you can put some fray check in there. So now I'm going to go ahead and close up my buttons. Or should I say his buttons. Let's have a look-see. I think it looks marvelous. I gotta pull my buttons down. There we go. Wow. Look at that. So my sides have been serged, and I want to show the sleeve. So if you remember, I press the seams for the sleeves. So now that the shirt is sewn together, whenever I turn the sleeve, I have a cuff that's already there, and I don't have to worry about pressing this in a circle. So I do need to serge the ends of the sleeve, but I just wanted to show how there's already a hem there. Okay, so everybody, go ahead and sew your sleeves. Finish up your sleeves, finish up the hem of your shirt. And if you make this shirt, please let me know so that I can see it. Tag me wherever you are. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Tag me. Thanks for watching. Loves.